Hello friend, Greg here. Did you know that I created some Bangkok walking tours? Use your phone to listen to me yap on a GPS guided tour that takes you through some of my favorite parts of the city, giving you the skinny on the sights and history that make this place such a shambolic, wonderful mess. Head to voicemap.me and search for Bangkok. On this episode, we tackle the popular Thai phrase of Mai Pen Rai to discuss when enough becomes too much.
So if you've ever heard the phrase and wondered if there's a dark side to this popular cultural touchstone, you'll dig this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 because the Canadian version of Mai Pen Rai was driving me crazy, which is, of course, it's all good, eh? Even when it is demonstrably not good.
That might not be that different from the time I've been right, but we'll get to that on this show.
Totally.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 24 years ago. Fell in love with the feeling that I won the lottery when a Thai restaurant actually has something that I really want from their menu. So I never left.
This is Ed's theory of service in Thailand. You have to assume the first 3 tries are going to result in a negative outcome. And then when you get a positive one, it's like, I'm ahead.
This happened to be yesterday. I'm not making this up. I was at a doctor's appointment in the morning at a hospital, and they had an oban pan, which I used to go to a lot, but I don't have access to one. So it was cool. I got to go to oban pan, and it was in the morning. Nice. So I felt like it was in the morning. So I felt like having eggs. So I ordered an egg croissant, and the waitress staff said, "Kato nakap, mot lao nakap, mai mi nakap." And so I said, "Okay, could I have a cheese and egg bagel?" And she goes, "Oh, kato, mai mi mot lao nakap." So I'm looking at the menu and I said, "Could I have an egg and spinach sandwich?" And she goes, "Mai mi nakap." And then I go, "Do you have any eggs at all?" And she's like, "No."
Oh, God.
So
the staple breakfast food that everyone asks for at breakfast, which it is right now. Yeah, we're out of that.
Yeah. Well, welcome to Thailand is all. So when they do have something you really want, it's like you won the lottery.
Thanks.
All right, we want to give a big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get every episode a day early, behind-the-scenes photos of our interviews, a heads up to send questions to upcoming guests, and access to our Discord server to chat with me, Greg, and other listeners around the world. But best of all, patrons also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and Bangkok topics. On this week's bonus show, we chatted about my visit to the dentist after too many years of ignoring it, where I was told it was going to hurt many. Discussions on the new movie about the Menendez brothers and how Thais might react to crimes against their parents, and a potential new kink for Greg. And the less said about that, the better.
Yep.
To learn how to become a patron and get all this good stuff, plus full access to over 700 bonus and regular back episodes, click the support button at the top of our website.
That's right. And as always, if you have a comment, a show idea, or just want to reach out and say hello, head to bangkokpodcast.com and click the little microphone button on the bottom right to leave us a voicemail that we will use on the show.
For sure.
Okay, then. Well, on this episode, we discuss something that has become such a part of Thai culture that almost everyone who visits knows about it before they arrive, and that is the phrase Mai Pen Rai, or Mai Pen Rai, I think, if you want to add a little bit of flair to it. Now, for those who don't know, Mai Pen Rai is Thai for basically no worries, no big deal, forget about it, it's all good, that kind of thing. And it's generally considered to be a contributing factor to why Thais have a reputation for being so laid back and chilled out, which is cool. But there is a flip side to this saying that has some less desirable attributes, and some may even say that these can lead to bigger problems. Now, we should say that this is being recorded a day after the terrible accident that saw over 20 school students perish in a fire after the bus they were on crashed. And there's been a lot of very heated talk online about how an accident like this could happen, with many people wondering if the Maipenrai attitude can sometimes be used to gloss over things that should not be glossed over, leading to potentially very, very bad outcomes. So, Ed, this is it seems like a pretty frothy, light discussion, and maybe it is, but like I said, there's also kind of a dark side to this.
For sure.
What's your take on the overall landscape of this question?
Well, first off, it's a great topic and a great lesson for expats in Thai culture. I think your introduction was awesome in setting it up, because I think in general the use of my pen rai, the way Thai people say no problem, no worries, it's a good thing. And we've talked about many times how Thai people are in general very nice. They're indirect, they're easygoing, they're difficult to insult, and this just adds up to very smooth, kind of warm experiences here, which you and I love. But I think it takes a few months here to start to see the potential risks or downsides to people always saying no problem. The bottom line is what we have come to learn is that Thai people often or can say it's no problem when there really is a problem, and you're for Westerners who tend to hang on people's words a little bit more, it can be very frustrating when a Thai person says there's no problem, but actually there is one, and you're supposed to pick it up from the context, as we've talked about before. So, I like my Penrai. It's one of the reasons I'm here, but I think the school bus crash and some other big tragedies in Thailand, it does show that there's a dark side to not saying, stop, this is wrong.
Right, right. And I think foreigners often have a hard time wrapping your mind around it, because for a lot of Western cultures, if there is a problem, if there is a Ben, my Ben is the problem in that sentence. My Ben Rai, like no troubles. But if there is a problem, then it's best to just deal with it, to talk about it, to come at it head on and find a solution. But in Thai culture and other Asian cultures as well, the priority is placed on not causing waves. So this problem might hurt someone's feelings. It might insult someone. It might upset the apple cart. Better to just Maipenrai. Don't worry about it. Just forget it.
The priority is put on social harmony or something like that. And my take on these cultural things, I like shooting the shit about it, because I have no background or training in cultural studies. So even though I'm an academic, my background is in politics and political theory and political philosophy. So when I talk about that stuff, I feel burdened by the fact that I'm supposed to know what I'm talking about. So it's like
I feel that burden every day.
That's right. When I talk about politics or law, it's like I have no excuse, right? But when it comes to culture, it's like I've never studied it in school at all. I don't know anything about the academic study of culture per se, and so for me, it's very ad hoc. It's very pop, and it's me having to try to figure out Thai culture kind of on my own, but also using you and other expats as a sounding board. And it's kind of what our whole show is about, right? So I don't have any like provable insights. Like I don't have any research on Thai culture or anything like that I can point to, but I can just talk about my experience. And my experience with my Panrai is that it can be absolutely fantastic and be a main reason why you want to stay here, but it also can be exceedingly frustrating.
Yeah, and as I always do in shows like this, where we're potentially going to get into some criticisms of Thailand, we should say that of course we love Thailand and we love living here, and that's why we've been here for decades and decades. But every country has its issues, and every country is always has a potential to improve and be better. So that's what we're trying to talk about here. But this is something that I think is a bit of a cop out, and I cannot wrap my head around how ignoring a problem consistently, persistently, and forever will ever lead to any long-term solution. And,
right.
I've worked in a lot of places over my time in Thailand, and in Thai offices, it's so frustrating because it's like a consistent bottleneck where nothing ever gets solved
Uh,
Everyone knows what the problems are, but no one wants to have a short-term pain for long-term gain. And it's really, really hard to justify that over any length of time. And I've, even after 23 years, I've never really been able to get past that.
yeah, I agree. And to me, again, being a non-expert in culture, to me, it's almost like a dial on a on a cultural like sound system or something, where it's very
Mm.
difficult to put the dial in the right place for for
Yeah.
for how confrontational you should be, how outspoken you can be. Obviously, there are annoying people who say that something's wrong all the time, or there's people who are in your face complaining about shit all the time. You know, if if there's anything, to me, the West, I think, is too confrontational, and people's egos are always involved, and people are giving you shit, and it's really, there's no real problem. It's just some issue between you. Like the like
Right.
at
Right.
least the pleasant thing about being a foreigner here, and maybe it's true for ties, but it's definitely true for ties and foreigners, is that like no one points a finger at me and said like I screwed up, like whereas in the States that did happen. You know what I'm saying? And so I just,
Yeah.
but my point I'm trying to make is there's got to be some kind of balance, so maybe the West is too confrontational, maybe Thailand not so much. But to me, what frustrates me, and this is what I, sometimes, this is a bit, I don't know, like metaphorical or allegorical. So I don't literally know if this is true, but this is how we think about it. You've seen on the highway Thai girls on the back of a motorbike sitting side saddle, like on their phone.
Right.
So we've all seen this image, but I feel that Thai people, if there's an accident and the girl is injured or killed, then a lot of Thai people are going to say, well, like, what can you do? And
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute, there's a lot you can do. Like, don't ride side saddle on a motorbike on the highway. You know what I mean? It's like, I feel like there's
Right.
there's a bunch of things that Thai people just accept. They just say, my Panerai, like this is, and they just say, this is the way it is. But I feel they do it in situations where the situation is actually fixable.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I said, it's everyone knows the problem and no one wants to solve it. And I always rant about the education system. And while I'm not a teacher in the way that you were, I did work within the education system in Thailand for a
Yes,
few
you did.
years, so I got to see it. And there was big problems. In Thailand famously spends a huge amount of money on its education, but it's consistently in the bottom of all of ASEAN in terms of student test scores. And everyone knows what the problems are. I won't get into them, but everyone knows about them. They're openly talked about, but no one changes them. No one ever reorganizes or readjusts things because it would just be too much of a shock to the system. But that has to outweigh the potential embarrassment or loss of face that someone's going to feel, because it's just like
Correct.
it's a barrier to the greater good.
I think that's true. Now, listeners are probably wondering, like, what does my Panerai have to do with the recent bus accident that horribly killed so many young children? Well,
Hmm.
here's the connection. In Thailand, there's been several tragedies. I One tragedy comes to mind: a horrible fire on New Year's Eve at a nightclub called Santika a while
Hmm.
back that killed a lot of people. And it turns out that none of the fire code or club regulations were being enforced. It's like it's just a nightmare.
Right.
The exit doors were locked. There was no fireproofing. Uh, you know, Essentially, none of the laws were being enforced. And we're in the early days of this bus accident, but I've already read stories that the bus was not up to spec. That there's actually a legal limit on how many gas tanks you're allowed to have. Like again, we're in early days, but I read that illegally you're only
Right.
allowed to have like two gas tanks in the back of the bus, and this bus had like five that were stretched out over the whole bus. So when it caught on fire, it just burst into flames, and
Right.
it's a nightmare. And 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 again, we don't know exactly why, but I think there's a lot of regulations that are just unenforced. A lot of times when I read the Thai law, it seems reasonable to me. I mean, I know this is shocking, but you and I have said many, many, many times that the problem in Thailand is usually not what the law says, it's whether or not it's actually enforced. Right?
Right. Thailand has more than enough laws to
Yeah.
function at the same judicial level as any Western country
Yeah,
does.
and usually, I mean, not always, but usually when I read Thai law, I'm like, okay, that's kind of reasonable. So apparently there were regulations on school buses, and it just wasn't enforced.
Well, for me, the Mai Pen Rai attitude, the dark side of Mai Pen Rai, and let's restate for the record that we're not saying that the Western way of doing things is at all the best way, because it is not. But the Mai Pen Rai thing does have a dark side, and that I think it's often tied to corruption. And me personally, I really think that corruption itself has a light and dark side. When it works in your favor, it's pretty good. But when it doesn't, it's a pain in the ass. But, I'm sure someone at some point said, hey, we're not allowed to put this many gas tanks on the bus. And someone went, Mai Pen Rai, Mai Pen Rai.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
And
right.
here we are. So it's just, it's that easy attitude, that lackadaisical attitude of being able to overlook the little things that might
that's right.
not be little things.
Someone would have
Right.
someone would have to put their foot down and say, no, like, we can't do this. They would have to confront
that
someone, like, or maybe this was an old bus that had multiple gas tanks, and then when the law changed, they want to take the trouble of upgrading the bus, or whatever it was.
Yeah, I read that this bus was 54 years old or something like that. Which is...
And it's just, I mean, I am not a parent. I know you are, but I mean, if I was a parent of a kid in Thailand, I would not put my kid on a school bus that I did not almost inspect myself. Like, this is a horrifying event. To me, this is a national tragedy. I mean, like a school bus of kids were burned alive. It's on the street, like out in the street. There's video. This is like in the middle of a main road, in public. It's a horror show.
I can't imagine the sorrow. If it was me that this happened to, I would, my life would be forfeit, and I would dedicate the rest of whatever was left to enacting vengeance. It would just be such a life-ending event.
Thai people have to stand up and say no more. Like, they cannot say Mai Pen Rai. They cannot say shit happens. Like, they can't, because this kind of stuff is preventable if people are forced to follow the law. Like Thai parents, they have to explode, like, now. Like, this is just it's unacceptable to put a bunch of kids on an old, out of spec, unregulated, unsafe bus. It's craziness. And it's how I got the idea for this show. And we don't know, Greg and I don't know the exact, but I do think it had something to do with Mai Pen Rai. Like you said, I think it comes down to the bus company probably knew what the regulations were, and they were like, oh, well, it doesn't really matter. Like, why bother? Or it's going to cost us some money to upgrade. And it's just it's just unacceptable.
And I've talked about this on the show before. It was years ago now, but I remember there was a video online that went around, and it was a foreigner who was walking across the street somewhere, and he got hit by a car. And it wasn't hard. He wasn't really hurt, but it was enough to knock him down onto the pavement and, send him sliding along the pavement for a few meters. And the video was basically of him sitting in the front of the car in the road, refusing to get up. And he was surrounded by Thai people. He was obviously okay. He had a couple of scratches and stuff like that. But the Thai people in Thai were basically saying, like, look, she whined. The driver said, sorry, get up and get out of the road. It's like Mai Pen Rai. It's over.
Right.
He was sitting in the road, and he was basically saying, no, this is not all right. You cannot just smash into someone and just say, sorry, Mai Pen Rai, and go on with your day. I'm fine right now, but what happens next time when she's going 20 kilometers an hour faster and it's a little kid, right?
Right.
This Mai Pen Rai attitude really, really can come back to bite you in the ass in the absolute worst way possible. And this guy, I totally agree with him. He was like, it's not okay to just why someone and everyone laughs and get on with your day when something that's potentially serious happens, and it should change.
Yeah, correct. I'm with you. I really wish, you and I were chatting about this a little bit before the show. So the Santika fire, it happened, something like 20 years ago or something like that. And I'm really curious if regulations at nightclubs are better enforced now than they were back
Mm,
then. Because
yeah.
for that club on that night, it's like all these safety rules were violated, and
66 people died that night.
yeah, horrific story, and
Yeah.
I really wish Thailand had stronger investigative journalism. I want like 60 minutes on the case, Hoaxip Nati. I want Hoaxip Nati on this.
Oxygenati.
Seriously, I might have to start that show because I really want to know, like, are Thai nightclubs any safer now than they were like the night of that Santika thing? And this bus tragedy, it better change like the quality of school buses. It better.
Yeah, well, I don't know, man. I'm not too optimistic. I mean, every year we have the poison air season, and every year it's always like, oh, well, we're gonna do this and this and this, but nothing ever really changes. Every year they're like, we're gonna cut down on buses and trucks that spew black smoke onto the roads, but you still see them all over the place. Granted, not as much as you used to, so progress is slowly being made. But what's
Right.
too slow?
Well, I'm going to watch
Like.
this. I'm going to watch, even though, I mean, I think we all have a dog in this fight since no one wants to see this happen to kids. But I'm going to try to follow this issue. I'm really curious if, I mean, this is so horrific. I mean, if this doesn't motivate people to fix something, then like what can? You know, if,
Yeah, right.
if a bunch of kids getting killed on a school trip, if that doesn't motivate you, then there's basically nothing that can motivate you.
Right, right. And again, we're not saying that, My Pen Rye was directly related to this. It's like Ed said, it's still early days. There's still a lot we don't know. But it's not, the My Pen Rye thing is just not simply that. It's got connections to, like I said, corruption and
That's right.
overlooking things
That's
and
right.
seniority and
Letting
saving
shit
face.
slide.
And,
Yeah,
yeah,
letting shit slide,
letting shit slide.
and just kind of hoping for the best. And basically it involves like taking unnecessary risks, and then when something bad happens, you're like, well, that's life. And I'm like, no, well, some things are life. Like if you get randomly struck by lightning, okay, then that's life. There's nothing you can do about it. You know what I'm saying? But these
Right,
are
right.
fixable problems.
And it can also happen in less deadly situations too, where the potential is also there for some fallout. Like, a friend of mine recently was dealing with a situation where he met his girlfriend's boss at work, and it was a senior guy, the senior level guy. It's this senior level guy, and he introduced himself as like, your girlfriend is my gig, ha 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 ha. And my friend didn't really appreciate that. And a gig, if you don't know, is like sort of like girlfriend on the side. His girlfriend was obviously uncomfortable about it. He didn't like it, and he got kind of upset about it. And everyone was just like, "My pinrai, my pinrai." It's just how they talk here.
Right, right.
And it's like, well, no, that's something that bothers me. It bothers her. And just because this guy is senior, his senior position, that no one can say anything about it. And again, it's another Mipe and Rye thing where there is actually someone who is really affected by this in a negative way, but no one really has I
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
know,
the
you know what I'm
bottom line
saying?
is the bottom line is the person who makes a mistake, they're not supposed to be able to say, "Oh, it's nothing." It's like they shouldn't be able to kind of put pressure on you to say it's nothing. If you're
Mhm.
so this guy was offended, he gets to decide if it's nothing or not. Other
Right.
people's other people's like, "Oh, it's nothing." He's like, "Well, it happened to
You
me."
don't get to decide how I feel.
That's right. Yeah. So anyway, I really think that this is really this question of judgment and calibration. Uh, Certainly, Thai people get it
Mm.
right. Certainly, Thai people get it right a lot. Like Thai people don't make a mountain out of a molehill, and I really appreciate that. Like there's just, you know, like there's a lot of stuff that they let slide that I think you should let slide. Like like they're not sticklers for details, and I think it's great.
Yeah.
But it's just this judgment problem where it's just there's certain things where I'm like, wait a minute, like you should not let that like safety regulations in nightclubs and buses, you can't let that slide. You can't.
Right, exactly. But then you have to ask your question, like, where do you draw the line and who draws the line?
All right.
Like,
Right.
I'm jaywalking. Might be lie. Well, yeah, okay, I'm probably going to be okay. But then, then someone does cross in an actual crosswalk and gets smoked by a motorcycle, like that poor woman, months back. You can't just sort of dismiss everything, and it's an unanswerable question of where do you draw the line with what's okay to turn your cheek to, and where do you draw the line with
Right.
no,
It's not
everything
easy.
on this side of the line needs to be solid.
Right. I mean, it's not easy, but the bottom line is it comes down
No.
to good judgment in each case. And I'm going to follow this bus story and see how it pans out. But it's hard to believe that a bus company or bus owner wouldn't know what the legal requirements were. I find that hard to believe. But we'll have to
Right.
wait.
Yeah,
We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, well, it's horrible news, and those accountable should definitely be punished to the maximum extent possible. But it's sort of like the counterfeit question that we talked about on a previous show a few months back. When you're buying a counterfeit T-shirt, it's not a big deal, but when you buy some medicine and you find out it's counterfeit, suddenly it's a much bigger issue. So
Correct.
these things need to be taken seriously.
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
yeah, we love Mike and Rye, but there are limits to everything.
Not always.
No, not always. Yeah. All right, well, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we discuss to decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we just have to learn to live with no matter how we feel about it. This week, Ed, I got something for you.
Alrighty.
Now, you're a vegetarian person. You
I
like
am.
to eat the vegetables. I do too. I've been eating a lot of salads lately. Actually, the salads from Get Fresh,
They're good.
they're not the cheapest salads in the world, but damn are they good.
Agree. No, they've got a great menu.
Yeah. My son even asked for one the other day. He's like, "Can I try like half of your salad?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, this is great."
Damn.
Kids eating vegetables, right? Like it's a perennial problem.
That's right.
So I gave him some and I put some salad dressing on it, and he was not impressed. But baby steps. Anyway, my question is this for love, loathe, or live with. What do you think of when you order an entree, a main dish at a restaurant, and it comes out with a quote unquote salad? And when I say salad, I mean a pile of shredded cabbage with a spooge of mayonnaise on top. What's your take on that? What's your take on that side?
Yeah, lame side salads or whatever you want to call them. It's almost like a complimentary dish. Yeah, they're pretty lame. The funny thing is I am a vegetarian. I do try to eat salads, but I'm not some huge salad guy or huge vegetable guy. But maybe because I'm vegetarian, that when I have a salad, it is kind of a proper one, like you mentioned, Get Fresh, and so I do like kind of proper, more complex salads.
Right.
So that type of I don't know what to call them, like just comes with a meal type salads.
Yeah,
and
it's
it's
sort
just,
of
like you said, it's cabbage with some like sauce on it. That's it.
Yeah, it's sort of like this gray dead zone between a garnish and a side dish.
That's
I
right.
don't know what to call it.
It's minimal. It's like
I,
it's about the weakest salad you could imagine. It's just the minimalist. Like it's the minimum thing that you could call a salad.
Right, exactly. The minimum viable salad. It's the MVS. So
That's great. That's great. No, I mean, I have to say loathe, although it's not something I lose sleep over. So it's it's kind of like a light loathe. It's just, I guess I've adapted to it. But yeah, you can't like those things.
No, I'm a live with, but I will never eat it, and I probably have never eaten it. So I'm a live with, but I always look at it like, ooh.
I wonder if there'll be some academic research on the minimum viable salad. I think we need some proper social science.
I think these are the issues that we demand that social science look into.
All right, so I'm a light loathe.
Yeah, okay.
All right, a final thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping in our never-ending quest for cool content. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Yeah, baby. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can send us a voicemail through our website that will feature on the show. Hit me up on threads at BKKGreg. Thanks for listening, everyone. Take it easy out there. Take care of yourself and your family. We'll see you back here next week.
No doubt.
The folder, EP40. And we're more than halfway through this season.
It's crazy. Craziness. Absolute craziness. Insanity.
Getting old. Insanity, getting old. Hey, John Amos died. Do you know that guy?
John Amos. Why do I know that name?
He was the African American actor. You'd immediately recognize him if you saw him. He was the father of the girlfriend in Coming to America. He was one of the bad guys in Die Hard 2. He was really funny. I always liked him.
Well, Chris Christopherson, man. It's there's
just reminds me we're getting old.
I have a feeling a lot more people are going to die. It's just a feeling I have.
Oh, that's grim. All right, let's distract ourselves by doing a podcast.